I'm Geneva Mayfield, 78 years old. A woman and my own son told me that if I wasn't willing to be the full-time babysitter at our family Christmas, then I shouldn't bother to come at all. Those were his words. Not shouted in a moment of anger that could be forgiven, but spoken with a cold, matter-of-fact finality that cut deeper than any knife. He said them as if he were discussing the weather, as if my presence in the family I had built, nurtured, and funded for decades was conditional, a service to be rendered in exchange for a seat at the table. And the bitterest part? It was a table I had bought and paid for. For 40 years, Christmas has been my production. My late husband, Robert, and I always believed that family was the only true wealth a person could have. We started with nothing, just two kids from Charlotte with calloused hands and a shared dream. We built our construction business from the ground up, beam by beam, brick by brick. Robert was the heart and the muscle, a man whose laughter was as strong as his handshake. I was the head for numbers, the one who could stretch a dollar until it cried for mercy and see a balance sheet 5 years into the future. Together, we made a good life, a very good life. And when Robert passed 10 years ago, leaving me with the fruits of our lifelong labor, I made a promise to his memory that our family would never drift apart. I would be the glue. My son Marcus is our only child. I poured every hope and dream into that boy. I see his father's handsome face in him, but as he's gotten older, I've seen less and less of Robert's spirit. Robert believed in earning your place. Marcus, bless his heart, believes in having it handed to him. My generosity, I fear, became his expectation. It started small. When he married Tiffany, a woman whose smile never quite reached her eyes, I paid for the wedding. A lavish affair that was more for her parents' friends than for our family. I told myself it was to give them a good start. When they wanted a down payment for their first house in a neighborhood I couldn't have afforded until I was 50, I wrote the check without a second thought. I was building a legacy, I thought. I was making things easier for him than they had been for us. I see now that what I was actually doing was removing the need for him to build anything for himself. There were signs, of course. Red flags I chose to paint a festive green. I remember about 5 years ago, Marcus came to me with a business proposition. He needed $50,000 for an investment, something about tech startups with a guaranteed return. He was so convincing, using all the right buzzwords he'd learned from television. I was so proud that he was showing some of Robert's ambition. I transferred the money. A month later, Tiffany posted a photo on social media. There was Marcus beaming, leaning against a brand new luxury sedan with a bow on the hood. Her caption read, "My hubby works so hard, look at his new bonus for himself." My blood ran cold. When I confronted him, he was so casual, so dismissive. "Oh, that mom, you have to look successful to be successful. It's an investment in my image. Don't worry, I'll pay you back." He never did, and I never pressed the issue. I didn't want the conflict. I just wanted my son to love me. Then there was the jewelry. Tiffany had a way of admiring my things that felt less like a compliment and more like an appraisal. On my 75th birthday, I wore a sapphire necklace that Robert had given me for our 30th anniversary. It was my most treasured possession. Tiffany spent the entire evening talking about it. "Oh, Geneva, that blue is just divine. You know, sapphires are my birthstone. What a coincidence." Marcus and I were just saying how that piece would become a true family heirloom one day. She touched my arm as she said it, her fingers cool against my skin. The implication was clear, it should be hers. When would I be done with it so she could have it? It made me feel like I was already a ghost, a portrait on the wall whose belongings were being divided up by the living. But the most telling incident, the one I should have learned from, was the trip to the beach 3 summers ago. Again, my treat. I rented a huge house on the Outer Banks for 2 weeks for all of us, Marcus, Tiffany, and their two children, plus my niece and her family. I had imagined lazy days reading on the porch, teaching my grandchildren how to find sand dollars, and evening talks with a glass of sweet tea. The reality was quite different. Every single night, like clockwork, Marcus and Tiffany would announce they were going out for a much-needed date night. They'd leave me with all four children, ranging in age from 3 to 10. I'd be juggling bath times, bedtime stories, and toddler tantrums while they were out enjoying fancy dinners I was also indirectly paying for. The one time I gently suggested that perhaps they could stay in one evening, Tiffany had sigh. Ed dramatically. "But Geneva, we never get any time to ourselves. You're retired, you get to relax all day. This is our only vacation." The nerve of it to call my life one long relaxation while I was actively providing the very vacation she was taking for granted. I was no longer the matriarch, I was the live-in help, and I let it happen because the alternative, an empty beach house, a silent phone, seemed so much worse. I paid for their company and swallowed my pride. I see now that I wasn't buying their company, I was only renting it, and the lease was about to expire. This year I was determined would be different. It would be perfect. Christmas had always been Robert's favorite holiday, and in the decades since his passing, I'd thrown myself into it with an almost desperate energy, as if the glow of 1,000 fairy lights could somehow fill the gaping hole he'd left behind. This time I wanted to create a memory so vibrant, so joyous, that it would echo for years to come. I wanted a Christmas card photo of a family united, happy, and warm. My search for the perfect location ended in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina. I found it online, a magnificent cedar and stone lodge nestled in a grove of snow-dusted firs called Eagle's Peak. The pictures took my breath away. It had a great room with a 2-story Riverrock fireplace, a professional-grade kitchen for cooking a grand Christmas dinner, and enough bedrooms for the whole clan, Marcus and his family, my sister's children and their partners, and a few close cousins. It even had a game room in the basement and an outdoor hot tub overlooking the valley. It was ridiculously expensive, a fact I kept to myself, but in my mind it was worth every penny. This place, I thought, was where the magic would happen. This was where we would feel like a family again. I booked it for the entire week leading up to Christmas. My excitement was a warm hum beneath my skin. I spent weeks planning, my days filled with purpose. I called a catering company to handle the big Christmas Eve dinner so I wouldn't be stuck in the kitchen. I ordered personalized stockings for every single person, including the new baby my niece was expecting. I even found an online service that would deliver a towering, pre-decorated Fraser fur to the lodge before we arrived. I envisioned my grandchildren's faces, wide with wonder, as they saw it for the first time. I imagined us all bundled in sweaters, sipping hot cocoa by that enormous fireplace, sharing stories and laughter. It was a beautiful, powerful dream. A week before the trip, Marcus and Tiffany called and said they needed to stop by to finalize the logistics. I was thrilled. I thought they were as excited as I was. I baked a lemon pound cake, his favorite, and put on a fresh pot of coffee. They swept into my quiet house, bringing a gust of cold air and an air of business-like efficiency that immediately felt out of place. There were no hugs, just brisk pecks on the cheek. "Mom, the place looks amazing online," Marcus started, already pulling a tablet from his briefcase. Tiffany sat beside him on my sofa, arranging her coat and placing her designer handbag carefully on the floor beside her. She gave me a tight, practiced smile. "It's going to be wonderful, isn't it?" I said, beaming. "I can already smell the pine needles and the fireplace." "Right, well about that," Marcus said, tapping the screen of his tablet. "Tiff and I have been thinking it's a big trip, a lot of moving parts, a lot of kids in one place. We need to be organized to make sure everyone has a good time." "That's very thoughtful of you," I said, though a small, cold knot was beginning to form in my stomach. This didn't feel like holiday planning. It felt like a corporate merger. So Tiffany, being the genius she is, has drafted up a little schedule. Just a loose framework, really, to make sure all the bases are covered, he said, turning the tablet towards me. On the screen was a spreadsheet, a color-coded hour-by-hour schedule for the entire week. My eyes scanned the columns. There were slots for adult ski time, couples spa afternoon, and wine tasting trip. Then I saw the other category, highlighted in a bright, cheerful yellow that made my blood run cold. It was labeled childcare supervision. And next to nearly every single time slot, from 8 a.m. until the children's bedtime at 9 p.m., was a single name: Grandma Geneva. I stared at it, the words blurring together. My name was there for breakfast duty, for nap time supervision, for afternoon crafts, for evening wind down. According to the schedule, my only free time was after 9 p.m., when everyone else would likely be exhausted or already in bed, and a 2-hour block on Tuesday afternoon, which was marked as optional. I felt the air leave my lungs. This wasn't a framework, it was a work roster. They had, in the most impersonal way imaginable, assigned me the role of unpaid nanny F. Or the entire vacation. I looked from the sterile grid on the screen to the faces of my son and daughter-in-law. Marcus was looking at me expectantly, as if waiting for praise for his efficiency. Tiffany was examining her manicure, a picture of detached indifference. I don't understand, I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. What is this? It's a schedule, Mom, Tiffany said, finally looking up, her tone laced with a faint, patronizing sweetness. We just know how much you adore the grandkids, and you're so much better at handling them than we are. This way, the rest of us can get a real break, a real vacation. And you get to do what you love, spend quality time with the little ones. The phrase quality time felt like a slap. This wasn't quality time. This was a job. They weren't asking me to help out. They were assigning me a task. They had looked at the beautiful, magical Christmas I was creating for them, a gift of love and legacy, and seen only a logistical problem to be solved, and I was the solution. The free, built-in, ever-reliable solution. The warm hum of excitement inside me died, replaced by a profound and chilling silence. The perfect plan had a price, and I was just now realizing I was the one expected to pay it. I took a slow, deep breath, trying to calm the frantic beating of my heart. The cheerful yellow highlight on the spreadsheet seemed to mock me, a glaring symbol of their audacity. I looked at my son, searching his face for any sign of shame, any flicker of doubt. I found none. He just looked impatient, as if I were a slow employee holding up a meeting. Marcus, honey, I began, keeping my voice as even and gentle as I could manage. This is a lot. I was looking forward to this trip too. I wanted to relax. I want to sit by the fire and read a book. I want to talk with my grandchildren, yes, but I also want to talk with you and my nieces and everyone else. I don't want to be on duty. Tiffany let out a little sigh, the kind one makes when dealing with a particularly dense child. Geneva, it's not being on duty. It's just helping out. It's what families do for each other. We all have to chip in to make it work. Chipping in is one thing, Tiffany, I said, my voice gaining a bit of strength. This spreadsheet makes it look like I'm the designated staff. Look at this. From 8 in the morning until 9 at night, every day. When exactly is my vacation supposed to be? Marcus finally spoke, his tone shifting from businesslike to annoyed. Mom, come on, don't be so dramatic. You love the kids. You're always saying you want to spend more time with them. Here it is. We're giving you all the time in the world with them. Giving me? I felt a surge of disbelief. You're not giving me anything, Marcus. You are assigning me a job, the job of raising your children and my niece's children so that all of you can go skiing and wine tasting. Did it ever occur to you to ask me if this is what I wanted? Did you think for 1 second about what my dream for this holiday might be? Your dream, Mom, you're retired, your life is one long vacation, he said, echoing Tiffany's cruel words from that beach trip years ago. The phrase hit me like a physical blow. It was their go-to justification, the line they used to absolve themselves of any consideration for my own life, my own desires. Because I no longer went to an office every day, my time was worthless. My energy was limitless. My personhood was negotiable. My life is not a vacation, Marcus, I said, my voice trembling now, not with weakness, but with a rising tide of anger. I raised you, I ran a business, I manage a household. I manage the finances that are paying for this entire trip, the mountain lodge, the food, the gifts. Being retired doesn't mean I've ceased to exist as a human being with her own needs. Oh, here we go, Tiffany muttered, rolling her eyes so obviously that it felt like a performance. Throwing the money in our faces, we knew this was coming. I am not throwing money in your face, I snapped, my composure finally cracking. I am stating a fact. I am providing this experience for our family out of love, and in return, you don't even grant me the basic courtesy of asking me what I might enjoy. You hand me an itinerary where I am treated like the hired help. Do you have any idea how disrespectful that is? Marcus stood up, towering over me as I sat on my own sofa. His face was a thundercloud of resentment. He had the look of a man whose divine right had been questioned. I think you're the one being disrespectful, Mom, he said, his voice dropping to a low, cold register. We're trying to organize a nice, smooth holiday for everyone, and you're making it all about you. It's always about you, isn't it? Your plans, your traditions. Well, for once, it needs to be about what the rest of us need, and what we need is a break. What we need is for someone to handle the kids. He paused. Ed letting the silence hang heavy in the air. The smell of the lemon pound cake on the counter suddenly seemed cloying and sickening. So it's simple, he continued, his voice void of all warmth, all filial affection. It was the voice of a manager delivering a final warning. We all need to chip in, that's the deal. If you don't want to help with the kids, he shrugged, a gesture of ultimate dismissal, then maybe you should just stay home, don't come. Don't come. The two words echoed in the sudden, ringing silence of the room. They hung there, shimmering with a cruelty so profound it stole the air from my lungs. My son, my only child, the baby I had held in my arms, the boy whose scraped knees I had bandaged, the man whose life I had tried to pave with gold, had just uninvited me from my own family, from the very Christmas I was creating for him. My attendance was transactional, my worth was conditional. I was the grandma, the matriarch, the keeper of the family flame, but only if I was also the nanny. I stared at him, my mouth agape. I couldn't form a response. I felt the floor drop out from beneath me, the cozy, familiar world of my living room dissolving into a cold, terrifying void. He wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking past me at the door, ready to leave. Tiffany was already on her feet, gathering her purse, her expression one of smug victory. They had delivered their terms. The negotiation was over. Without another word, they turned and walked out of my house, closing the door behind them with a soft, final click. And I was left alone, with the color-coded spreadsheet still glowing on the tablet, a testament to just how little I truly meant to them. In the immediate aftermath of their departure, the silence they left behind was a physical presence. It was heavier than any sound, pressing in on me from all sides. The phantom scent of Tiffany's expensive perfume mingled with the homey smell of the uneaten pound cake, creating a nauseating combination of intimacy and betrayal. I sat on my sofa, frozen, for what must have been an hour. I didn't cry. I was too stunned, too hollowed out for tears. It was as if my son had reached into my chest and scooped out my heart, leaving a cold, aching cavity. The next few days were a blur of gray monotony. I moved through my house like a ghost, the rooms that were once filled with the warmth of my memories with Robert now feeling vast and empty. Every photograph seemed to mock me. There was Marcus at his high school graduation, his arm around me, both of us beaming. There we were on a family trip to the Grand Canyon, Robert looking so alive and strong, with a tiny Marcus perched on his shoulders. These images were supposed to be my comfort, proof of a life well lived, of a family built on love. Now they felt like evidence in a trial against me. Where did I go wrong? When did the sweet boy on his father's shoulders turn into the cold stranger who could discard his own mother so casually? I replayed the conversation over and over in my mind, a torturous loop of his words and her smirks. Don't be so dramatic. It's what families do. Maybe you should just stay home. Each phrase was a fresh jab, a reminder of my new, diminished status. I was no longer Geneva Mayfield, the co-founder of a successful company, the respected matriarch. I was a utility, a service to be used and, when inconvenient, to be set aside. The worst part was the insidious whisper of self-doubt that began to creep into my thoughts. Was I being selfish? Was I being dramatic? At my age, shouldn't my greatest joy be serving my family, no matter the cost to myself? The culture I was raised in, the one where elders were revered and families stuck together, seemed to clash violently with the reality I was facing. My family was sticking together, all right against me. I kept my phone by my side constantly, my stomach twisting into a nervous not every time it buzzed, but it was never him. It was a spam call, an email notification, a message from a friend from my church group. The silence from Marcus was deafening. It was a deliberate, calculated silence. He wasn't going to call and apologize. He wasn't going to reconsider. He was waiting. He was waiting for me to break. He was waiting for the lonely, 78-year-old widow to call him, voice thick with tears, and capitulate. Okay, honey, I'll do it. I'll watch the children. Just please let me come. He was counting on my love for him being greater than my love for myself. And for a few desperate, lonely days, he was almost right. The loneliness was the worst part. Robert had been gone for 10 years, but I had never felt so utterly alone. When he was alive, we were a team. He would have never stood for this. I could hear his voice in my head, that low, rumbling bass that always made me feel safe. What in the hell is that boy thinking, Jen? Does he think his mother is a doormat? Robert would have called Marcus in a heartbeat his D. Disappointment, a weapon far more potent than anger, but Robert was gone. I was the only one left to fight this battle, and I felt my strength failing. On the third day, I almost did it. I picked up my phone, my thumb hovering over Marcus's contact photo. He was smiling, standing with his wife and children in front of their perfect, oversized house, the house I helped them buy. My heart ached. Maybe this was the price. Maybe one dreadful, exhausting week of babysitting was worth it to see my grandchildren open their gifts on Christmas morning, to be a part of the family, even as a glorified servant. I could swallow my pride. I had done it before. I could do it again. My pride felt like a small, insignificant thing compared to the gaping maw of a Christmas spent completely, utterly alone. The tears I had been holding back finally came, hot and bitter, rolling down my cheeks and dripping onto the phone's screen. I was old and I was tired and I just wanted my family. As I sat there, phone in hand, drowning in my own sorrow, my gaze drifted across the living room to the mantelpiece above the fireplace. It was cluttered with the artifacts of a lifetime, small trinkets, family photos, and in the very center, my favorite picture of Robert. It was taken on our 40th anniversary, just a year before he passed. He was looking directly at the camera, but he wasn't smiling. He had a look on his face that I knew so well, a look of quiet, unshakable resolve. It was the look he got right before closing a tough deal, the look he had when he told me he was starting the business, the look he gave the doctor who delivered a grim diagnosis. It was the look that said, "I will not be broken." Looking at that photograph, something inside me shifted. The tears stopped. The self-pity began to recede, replaced by a slow-burning ember of anger. What would Robert think of me right now, crying over a son who treated me with such contempt? Robert had spent his life building a legacy not of money, but of dignity. He treated everyone, from the wealthiest client to the youngest laborer on his crew, with the same level of respect. He believed a person's word was their bond and their self-respect was their most valuable asset. And here I was, about to sell mine for a ticket to a party where I wasn't even wanted, only needed. The memory of Robert's strength gave me a jolt of my own. I wasn't just Robert's widow, I was Geneva Mayfield. I had balanced the books, negotiated with suppliers, and faced down bankers who told us we would fail. That woman, the partner, the businesswoman, was still in here somewhere, buried under years of being mom and grandma. My thumb moved away from Marcus's name. I scrolled through my contacts until I found a different one, David Carter. David had been Robert's best friend since childhood and our lawyer for over 40 years. He was retired now, but his mind was as sharp as a tack. More than a lawyer, he was family, the kind you choose. He was the one who held my hand at Robert's funeral and promised he would always look out for me. I hadn't called him in months, not wanting to be a burden. But now I needed more than a friend. I needed an ally. I pressed the call buttons. He answered on the second ring, his voice as warm and familiar as ever. "Geneva, what a nice surprise. To what do I owe the honor?" "David," I said, and my voice cracked, betraying the calm I was trying to project. I need to talk to you." He must have heard the distress in my tone because his voice immediately softened. "Of course, what's wrong? Are you all right?" And so I told him everything. I told him about my grand plans for the Christmas lodge, the excitement I had felt, and then I told him about the spreadsheet, the color-coded columns, the dismissive words, and the final, brutal ultimatum from Marcus. I didn't leave anything out, not my own hurt feelings or the shame I felt for even considering giving in. When I finished, the line was silent for a long moment. "That ungrateful, entitled," David began, his voice a low growl, and then he stopped himself. He took a deep breath. "Geneva, I am so sorry. I am so sorry that boy would treat his own mother that way. Robert would be spinning in his grave." "I know," I whispered. "David, am I wrong? Am I being selfish?" "Selfish," he practically shouted into the phone. "Geneva, you have subsidized that boy's entire adult life. You've been the bank of mom for 30 years. You offered them a gift, a ridiculously generous gift, and they had the audacity to spit on it and hand you a bill for your services. This isn't about you being selfish. This is about them being monstrously disrespectful." His validation was like a cool balm on a burn. He wasn't just humoring me, he was angry for me. "He is counting on you caving, you know," David continued, his voice now calm and strategic, the old lawyer in him coming out. "He has played this game with you for years. He pushes, you get upset. But in the end, you give in because you're a good mother and you love him. He's banking on that love. But Geneva, love without respect is just exploitation." He was right. Every word resonated with a truth I had been too afraid to face. Robert didn't work his fingers to the bone so you could be blackmailed by your own son, David said, his voice firm but kind. He worked so you could be secure, so you could be independent, so you could be respected. That money, that house, that life, it's yours, not theirs. Your love isn't something they get to put a price on. Your respect is not for sale. A fire I hadn't felt in years ignited in my chest. He was right. My respect was not for sale. My dignity was not a bargaining chip. I had been so lost in my role as the grieving widow and the lonely mother that I had forgotten who I was. I was Geneva Mayfield, and I was done being a doormat. Thank you, David, I said, my voice clear and strong now. Thank you for reminding me. What are you going to do? He asked gently. A plan, cold and clear, was already forming in my mind. I'm going to teach my son a lesson in economics, I said. The kind they don't teach in business school. It's called cause and effect. I hung up the phone, the sorrow and confusion replaced by a profound, steely calm. I walked over to my desk, sat down in the leather chair Robert used to use, and turned on my computer. The woman who had nearly called to beg for scraps of affection was gone. In her place was the woman who had helped build an empire. The glow of the computer screen illuminated my face in the dim light of the study. For the first time in days, my hands were steady. There was no hesitation, no second guessing. There was only the quiet, efficient hum of resolve. I was not acting out of spite or a desire for revenge. This was simpler. This was a correction, a balancing of the books. My first stop was the website for my bank. I navigated to the credit card section. There it was, my primary account, and underneath it, the supplementary card issued to Marcus A. Vance. For years, he had it for emergencies. Over time, those emergencies had become weekly gourmet grocery runs, subscriptions to wine clubs, and impromptu weekend getaways for him and Tiffany. I paid the bill every month without comment, telling myself it was a small price to pay for his happiness. I clicked on the card details. The option was clear and stark, black card. With a single, satisfying click, I cut off the flow. The tap was turned off. An alert popped up. Are you sure you want to permanently block this card? I clicked confirm without a moment's pause. The first domino had fallen, a small weight lifted from my shoulders. Next, I opened my email and found the confirmation for the Eagles Peak Lodge. The photos of the magnificent stone fireplace and the snow-covered valley no longer filled me with warmth. They were a monument to my foolishness. I found the rental company's phone number and dialed. A cheerful young woman answered. Blue Ridge Luxury Rentals, how can I help you? Hello, I said, my voice perfectly level. My name is Geneva Mayfield. I'm calling to cancel a reservation. I gave her the confirmation number. There was a moment of typing on her end. Oh yes, Mrs. Mayfield. The Eagles Peak Lodge for the week of the 20th, that's a wonderful property. May I ask the reason for the cancellation? My plans have changed, I said simply. I see, she said, her voice turning slightly more formal. Well, I do need to inform you that per our policy, cancellations within 30 days of the stay are subject to a fee equivalent to 50% of the total booking cost. She said it as if she expected me to argue, to be shocked. She expected the reaction of someone for whom that kind of money was a painful blow. That is perfectly acceptable, I replied calmly. Please proceed with the cancellation and charge the fee to the card on file, and please send me a confirmation email once it's done. There was a surprised pause on the other end. Of course, Mrs. Mayfield, I'll process that for you right away. I hung up. The most significant piece of the Christmas fantasy was gone, dissolved into the digital ether. I didn't feel a pang of regret. I felt a sense of liberation. I was taking back control not just of my finances, but of my life. The third call was to the catering company I had hired for the Christmas Eve dinner. I had been so excited about the menu, roast prime rib, scalloped potatoes, a croquembouche for dessert. Now the thought of it turned my stomach. I gave the man my name and explained the situation with the same cool detachment. He was more understanding, telling me he'd be able to refund most of my deposit since he hadn't ordered the specialty ingredients yet. Finally, I went through my online shopping accounts, the personalized stockings, the giant pre-decorated Fraser fur, the pile of gifts I had already ordered or the grandchildren, all set to be delivered directly to the lodge. One by one, I intercepted the orders. Cancel, cancel, redirect shipment to my own address. Cancel. With each click, with each call, I was dismantling the edifice of my own making. For years, I had been the silent, invisible architect of my family's comfort and joy. My love and my money were the foundation they had all built their lives upon, a foundation so deep and stable they had forgotten it was even there. They thought the house stood on its own. I was simply removing the foundation to see what would happen. I suspected it wouldn't stand for long. When I was finished, I leaned back in Robert's chair. The study was quiet, my work was done. There was nothing left to do but wait for the tremors to begin. I didn't have to wait long. 2 days passed in a state of surreal calm. I went about my days with a newfound lightness. I read a novel, I did some gardening, I even met a friend for lunch. I felt like myself again, a person separate from the tangled web of my family's expectations. Then, on the evening of the second day, my phone rang. The caller ID flashed a name I both dreaded and anticipated: Marcus. I let it ring 3 times before answering, taking a slow, fortifying breath. "Hello, Marcus," I said, my voice as placid as a summer lake. "Mom, what is going on?" He didn't say hello. His voice was a frantic, high-pitched squawk of pure panic. "I was just at the store and they said my card was declined. I tried to call the credit card company and they said you blocked it. What did you do?" "I canceled it," I replied, examining a loose thread on the armchair. "You canceled it? What do you mean you canceled it? Why would you do that? That was my emergency card." "Really? Because from where I'm sitting, your emergencies looked a lot like expensive cheese and Pinot Noir," I said dryly. "I simply decided I no longer wished to fund them." There was a sputtering on the other end of the line. What? I can't believe this. That's not the point. Mom, I just got off the phone with Tiffany. She called the lodge to confirm our arrival time and they told her our reservation was canceled. They said you canceled it. Did you do that? Did you cancel Christmas?" His voice was rising with every word, cracking with disbelief and rage. The accusation hung in the air: "You canceled Christmas." I refused to accept the blame. "No, Marcus, I did not cancel Christmas. I simply canceled a hotel reservation for a party I will not be attending." "What are you talking about?" he yelled. "I'm talking about our last conversation," I said, my voice still dangerously calm. "You made the terms very clear. You told me that if I was not willing to be the full-time, unpaid nanny for your children and everyone else's, then I shouldn't come. You uninvited me from the family holiday, so I am respecting your wishes. I'm not coming." I let that sink in. I could hear his panicked breathing. "And since I am not coming," I continued, delivering the final, logical conclusion, "I see no earthly reason why I should be paying for it. You don't get to throw me out of the party and then hand me the bill. That's not how it works." The silence that followed was profound. It was the sound of a worldview collapsing, the sound of entitlement colliding with reality. But the cousins are all coming. Tiffany's parents were going to join us for a few days. The flights are booked. What are we supposed to do?" he stammered, his anger deflating into pure desperation. "That sounds like a logistical problem," I said, using their own sterile words against them. "Perhaps you and Tiffany should make a spreadsheet to figure it out. I'm sure you'll find a solution. You are both very resourceful." He was speechless. He had no argument, no defense. For the first time in his adult life, he was facing a consequence he couldn't charm, bully, or guilt his way out of. The bank of Mom was closed. The emotional safety net had been removed. He was in free fall. "You've ruined everything," he finally whispered, his voice small and pathetic. "No, Marcus," I said softly, but with the strength of forged steel. "You did. You took my love for granted. You mistook my generosity for weakness. You saw your mother not as a person, but as a resource to be exploited. I have not ruined Christmas. I have simply decided to reclaim my own dignity. Goodbye." I ended the call. I didn't slam the phone down. I placed it gently back in its cradle. And then I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for 30 years. The fallout, as expected, was immediate. My phone lit up with calls and texts from nieces and cousins, some confused, some angry, a few secretly supportive. I answered one call from my eldest niece and calmly explained my side. After that, I turned the phone off. It wasn't my circus, and those weren't my monkeys. Christmas week arrived. My house was quiet, but it was a peaceful quiet. Not a lonely one. On Christmas Eve, David Carter and his wife, Sarah, came over. I had cooked a simple, elegant dinner: roasted chicken, sweet potatoes, and green beans. We sat at my dining room table, drinking wine and sharing stories about Robert. We laughed until our sides hurt. There were no schedules, no demands, no underlying tensions. There was only warmth, friendship, and genuine affection. On Christmas morning, I woke up to the sun streaming through my window. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat on my porch wrapped in a warm blanket. I felt a sense of peace so profound it was almost dizzying. I had not lost my family. I had lost the burden of being its sole provider. I had set a boundary, a wall of self-respect that was stronger than any amount of money. The future of my relationship with Marcus was uncertain. It would require him to do the one thing he had never done before: grow up. Whether he was capable of that was up to him. But my future, for the first time in a long time, was entirely my own. I was no longer the glue, the foundation, or the bank. I was just Geneva, and it was more than enough. I learned something powerful in that quiet Christmas. I learned that you can love your children with every fiber of your being, but you cannot let that love erase you. True family isn't about obligation or financial support, it's about mutual respect. It's about seeing the person, not the function they can perform for you. I had to tear down a palace to build a boundary, but a life lived with dignity in a small cottage is worth more than a life of servitude in a castle. My love is no longer unconditional. It comes with the condition that I am respected as the woman I am, and I will never, ever apologize for that.